This is Prince from MediaSFU, and today I'm providing a quick guide on how to get started with SpacesTek, which is our Modern project, which is it's gonna be like the equivalence of your WhatsApp clone or any application that we need to eventually have media support for. So, by default, this is part of a three-part series. Um, the very first one being the initial. There is Inferno, which is at the stage at which we actually have MediaSFU incorporated in our app and have the ability to start and receive media. And then the very last one is SpacesTek Advanced, which will take us through the process of doing mode switching, media, and then screen share. Every other advanced thing that doesn't get covered by an ideal SpacesTek, which is much more focused on audio transmission. That's SpacesTek Final. So we're gonna jump right into SpacesTekInitial, and in this case, my demonstration will be for a couple of SDKs. It doesn't really matter. I could just run this for Angular and React or Flutter as an illustration. And by default, what you do is a monorepo, which means you get to clone everything and then you go directly to whichever one you are working with, and then you run your application from there. You are advised to rename the React Native one to a suitable name, maybe chemicals, or and even for very long part names, you might have issues running your application. So probably just copy the files or rename the file to a simple name, maybe RN or RN1 or something that is pretty much short and easier to work with. Okay, so um, let's get started with loading our repo as we have here. And just a quick guide. After we clone the repo, we'll talk briefly about the backend, which is, as it is, just a simple read-write server. It doesn't really do anything much more than that. We just add it for persistence of data for those who be working across different sessions. You can completely get rid of it and just stick to your front end, which means if you start a room or something, space in one endpoint, you can access it from the other because it doesn't get updated in real time. Other than that, we have our usual SDKs, which is support so far. I'm going to have Flutter React Native, and then specifically for those on Expo, go with this, and then classic React JS. Now, if I open one, for example, which is React JS, you're going to get a bunch of um, installation guide, which is explaining what we have in the component content in terms of components and what you need to do. And a very much more important one is our transcript file. It essentially tells you about what you can follow without a video. But you're not gonna really have that in the SpacesTekInitial, but if you were to open this for final and advanced, you will have my transcript, which is basically step by step you can follow in combination with whatever demonstration video you find for that specific use case. So I'm gonna head back to the actual repo and then get a copy command. So, and once I have this, I will switch to my VS Code. You can just work from whichever one works for you, and I'll just do git clone. We should be done about in roughly a minute. So you could see we have our SpacesTek files and folders here as described. For demonstrative purposes, I'll start off with explaining the React.js and run maybe Flutter in addition to Angular. So in our React.js file, let me just quickly brush on the backend. So in the backend, we have just a simple backend. We have just a simple backend, which does one of two things. One or the other is you either read a file or we just read the whole state of the application, and then we also write the whole state of the application. This is a dummy server. If you were to be running this in an actual context, you will want to work more on something much more. In fact, you have to move all the API from the backend, from the front end to the backend. Now, regarding the application, almost every option has the API part. The structure is pretty much the same for everything. There's an API, there's the components or the library which are working in, and then we have the same job. We read and write to our front-end API. So if I open an example of like a React API, for instance, and I go to the index.ts, there is a configuration for there's a configuration that asks us whether we want to run with an actual backend server or not, and then what the URL is. So you either manually type this here or you edit your .env file for this case, and then it's just going to point to that. So by default, you also have a dummy db.json file, which has a couple of users in there. It's the same for every application you're looking at, as in every SDK. And then from here, we have our application logic currently, which if you would want to probably put in a day or two, or maybe max a week of effort, you can move this to your proper backend, MacroDB or some other one, and then have an actual functioning application. So basically, you configure your backend file, you configure your URL you're running from, and then your server URL, and you're just good to go regarding your application. So from here, what I'm gonna do is to run this. I'll just see the MediaSFU React.js. So sorry, that's going to be CD, yes, if you React.js, but I have to do this from SpacesTek. So I'm gonna go to SpacesTek. Let me sure. Um, okay, so I have that now. And then the very first thing you should need to do is to run npm install. Or if I run npm install on this, at the same time, I will just open for Angular. Like I mentioned, I'll be doing administration for across board. So I can go to a new terminal. And this is probably gonna take a couple of seconds to install. While this is installing, I'm gonna go install that for MediaSFU Angular as well. So I'll hit have to go to CD backstep and then go to MediaSFU Angular. Just in reference to my active directory, which is MediaSFU React.js. So and then I'll run npm install for Angular as well. And while this is also installing, I'll create a very last terminal, which is solely going to be the backend where it runs from. So I'll just create a new terminal, and in my new terminal, I'll just go to the backend. So I'll go back one step and then I go to the backend. And in the backend, everything is pretty much configured as port 3001 per the dummy data. So we'll just run npm install on the dummy data as well. And it's taking a couple of time to install the Angular and the React dependencies. Probably run into 2 or 3 minutes by now. So in the similar fashion, you enter your specific directory. You don't really need to run from the specific folder. Just reopen the new folder with whether it's Flutter or Angular or whatever it is, and then you go straight in there and just have an install by our guide, friends guide. So you install on whatever version you are running from, and then you just save the application. It's either npm start or ng save that will run whatever framework you're working with. So once we have this installed, I'll run npm start from the backend to get it to work. Then, which defaults to 3001 port. Then I'll run npm start to React. And then the same thing from Angular. You can run ng save, or you can just do npm start, which should default to that command. So I'm just gonna minimize this and then open my tab. So we do have our application. I'm just gonna minimize the display now. Function F11, and we should have our welcome screen. By default, React opens in the window. So I'm gonna do the same thing for Angular, which runs on port 4200. So local host is okay. So you could see side by side the differences between our Angular preview and then our React preview, and particularly what we are looking at is a welcome screen, which we have by default, and it just gives you the avenue to create a new profile or pick a profile. You have 4 domain names, which is pre-saved. If you happen to create a profile, you need a URL. For this case, you just grab a link, a URL online, an avatar that you just paste in here. And if you don't have one, it defaults to a MediaSFU logo, which you would probably want to change to your own logo or ensure this is done appropriately. So quick steps and whatever on the features we have in here, I'm going to sign in with Alice on. And by default, it sets a local storage item, which means you can just use one profile in one browser at a time. Either you create a new profile or a guest account or use different browsers. So you can log into more than one account in the same browser to kind of test features. So you have to use a couple of browsers or different instances of same accounts. Sorry, different instances of accounts on the same browser. So I'm going to go with Alice on this. And when you go to your Spaces room, by default, you have an option to filter by live, scheduled, or ended, and then you have filter by name. We don't have anything to start with, so this is a dummy room. And on this end, because you chose a later, this is not more available here, so I'm gonna stick to Charlie here. And if I were to go back to the um, front page again, Charlie's not going to be available. So from here, you have the option to create a space. If I create a space, by default, it's just a title, description, and the capacity of the space we want to work with. Other than that, we have to choose whether people are supposed to speak. They have an option to speak by default, or they need to ask the host for that. And then there's also an option to request to join or join automatically. Then you pick any dummy start time as an illustration. By default, it's just instant. Then how long we want this to progress. So as a demonstration, I'm gonna do like a test. Test space one. And I'm gonna copy the same thing and just rename it as description. So this. And from here, I'll leave everything as it is as a quick test. We're just gonna come demonstrate the other ones next. So if I create a space, by default it goes straight into the space. If you were to have the media part configured and joining an actual media room, this would have changed and the status would have changed to green. The progress of the meeting is indicated in this bar, and just the participants in there with the host normally crown sign and then the video toggle. So you can either connect your mic from here, or when you see in the later aspects, have a control pad to connect media or change media from here. We have an option to end the space from here, but then before we do that, I'm just quickly going to join from the side of the Angular. The test is also, I just hit join, and then we do have two participants. So the mic, and if I go to the side of the host, I can double click on the participant and there'll be an option to delete the participants. If the participant was supposed to have the mic on, media on, there'll be an option to mute the participants on the side of the host. So that we don't get to see in this illustration. One thing is I can you can leave the space as a usual user, or you can end the space. So I'm gonna leave the space first. Okay, and then it's just gonna be have one person on this side, and then when I end the space, I'm gonna come back here and then it says it's ended by the status, and then the same thing applies to this user. The next thing I'm gonna just try is create a space that is the dependent on permission. So I'm gonna create a new space and I'll say test space 2. And the same thing, I'm gonna copy the same place here. I'm going to disk, and then I'll say ask to speak and then ask to join. I'm going to activate these two and then create a space. So when I come in here instantly, you're going to see two things: join requests and then speak requests, which are currently not populated because there's none. Now on the side of the Angular, it says test space 2, but then we do have the option to request to join. So when I hit request to join, it's shows this pending approval. On the side of the host, there is the option to select or accept the user. And then currently here it just displays the actual ID of the user. It says user C. You might want to change this to the name or whatever suitable display you would want to use. So if I approve this, they just have the option now to, they would have an alert. I wasn't on the page, but then the alert would have appeared for approval notice, and then you can just proceed to join now. If you were to reject, the same thing, you have been rejected from joining the space. Now in here, uh, there is no option to request for media because once again we are not connected to the media room. But then to illustrate this, I will just change the connection option so that there will be the speak request for us to see. So let's make that switch to Angular to just have the options here. Um, in our browse, in our application, I'm just gonna quickly open MediaSFU Angular, and then um, we will target the the state that indicates whether we are connected to the room or not. Just as a demo illustration. So I go to source, I go to app, and then in components, I will just go to the space details, which shows the actual space we are in, the space list where we have our list of spaces, and the welcome screen where we are welcome, and then our participant card, which is displayed on the screen as each individual user. So in the space details, the state indicator whether we are connected or not to the room, I'll just change it to true. It's connected, and I'll save this. And then I'll just head back to the browser. And once it detects it's connected, and normally this should have been controlled by our actual connection to the MediaSFU room and update. So once it's updated, you have the option to request to speak now. So if I hit request to speak, this option goes to the host, which has the option to accept or reject per the desire. So for example, I accept this. You should have a notification that yes, you have been approved, and um, you can proceed to continue. Turn on your mic. But it is dependent on another condition, which is currently not disabled in our demo case without actual media room. Okay, so next thing we will probably just do is to just in the space now. And you should have that space also available here. In terms of other functionalities, we have the logout option. When you log out, whatever you recently used will be highlighted with this blue flag. When you decide to use that again, you just go straight back to your history. If you want to filter by the recent ones, I'll probably just do tests. Just do two. I should introduce this to just two. If you want to go by whether it's live, whether it's on, scheduled, and ended or scheduled, you have that called. We have your history, and then at the top spaces that have been run. So it's either on your order, it's either you're on the welcome page, you're on the spaces page, or you're on the detailed space as in an active space. By default, there's a pagination that runs when there's a lot of rooms. I'm just going to demonstrate that with all, and then I'm going to change like this too, and then I'm just going to quickly grab items on the page to make it just one to have that effect. So to that, I'm going to head to the Angular and species list. I'll show I'll remove the current limits items for page, and I'll just make it one. So that's when I go back to my browser on the Angular side, they should have the pagination to go through the spaces, which is one. By default, it's 5. It's just start to get it. So this effectively ends our demonstration of the demo project. Like I mentioned, if you want to make this a bit more production ready, you have to move the API paths to your actual MongoDB or any other server, any other proper database path. And then currently there's a lot of polling, just trying to get the state changes from the front and the back. You can also minimize that, and then just do a couple of fine tuning in terms of polishing, and then you're good to go. So we'll use this as a basic project to incorporate maybe SFU, and you should watch out for that. Depending on your SDK, you're gonna have a guide for React Native, and React.js, and Flutter all SDKs supported by MediaSFU will have a guide on how to take this project and then put in the support for media so that you can receive and send media as you should do, you should expect. And then also when you check the very final part, as in the advanced part from the final, how to do much more advanced things with media usage. Thank you, and then that's all for that. I'm gonna see you in the other videos. Bye.